Welcome to the Capitol Minute, your source for what is happening at the State House. Last week, the Senate Finance Committee considered next year's budget, and were faced with an even more drastic budget scenario than the House had before it. Unfortunately, much of the budget woes were a result of an accounting issue at the Department of Health and Human Services, meaning that Medicaid had $67 million less than expected when the House budget was passed. Additionally, the Board of Economic Advisors announced an unexpected $60 million shortfall in the general fund, which when added to the $67 million at DHHS meant that the Senate was starting in a $127 million hole to form a budget that had already been severely cut by the House. Despite this $127 million additional cut, we have been advised that physician reimbursement rates are still safe from cuts. The fact that Medicaid reimbursement rates have been protected this far into the process speaks loudly of our elected leaders' commitment to those who cannot afford their medical care, as well as their appreciation for what providers do, much at a loss even with rates at their current levels. The Senate Finance Committee continues to finish up budget documents in preparation for the floor debate next week, and we will let you know when the documents are released where physicians stand. In the midst of a difficult budget week came some great news from the Senate. The cigarette tax bill finally got its third reading on Wednesday night and passed out of the Senate for consideration by the House. Most of the funding from the cigarette tax would go to plug holes in the Medicaid budget that we anticipate in the coming years. By stripping some of the more controversial funding provisions from the cigarette tax and using funding from a different source, the bill received a veto-proof majority in the Senate, which it did not have after the second reading. There are still several hurdles to clear, including the House having another crack at the bill, likely conference committee, and a governor's veto. We must continue to let our elected officials know that with additional Medicaid burdens from Obamacare, we have to start putting money aside. In the House, scope of practice battles continue. The optometrists introduced another bill very similar to H. 3303 last week. With H. 3303 stuck in subcommittee, the optometrists are hoping to bypass what has been ample consideration by a dedicated subcommittee and instead have the new bill assigned to a subcommittee which may be more favorable to their legislation. While they are running out of time, we must stay focused on this legislation. The pharmacists attempted to attach a version of their vaccination legislation to an immunization bill that was on the floor of the House. Thanks to some quick action by Representative Chris Crawford and some excellent questions from the floor by Representatives Cobb Hunter, Loftus, and Skelton, this amendment was not made. Afterwards, all interested parties were able to agree on a bill that allows pharmacists to administer only the flu vaccine to adults. This is a busy time, and it is vital that you keep involved to ensure that you and your patients are protected. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.